Are you tired of Soulslikes that feel like a perpetual trip to the gloom factory? Do you crave a vibrant world, but still want that controller-smashing challenge? Well, Enotria, the last song, might just be the breath of fresh air you've been looking for. Or maybe not. Let's dive in. Enotria the Last Song is a Souls-like action RPG that stands out because of its stunning visuals and unique premise. It's a Souls game, but instead of dark castles and decaying crypts, you're exploring a world bathed in an almost theatrical, sun-drenched beauty. In Enotria, you're tasked with bringing color back to a world consumed by the, forgive my pronunciation, Connovatio, a never-ending play that has trapped everything in a state of eternal stagnation. To do this, you'll fight through challenging enemies, explore intricate environments, and harness the power of masks. Think of masks as swappable character classes. Each mask you collect offers a distinct set of base stats, along with weapon proficiencies and even unique special abilities called aphorisms. You can equip up to 3 masks at any time and seamlessly switch between them on the fly during combat, allowing for flexibility and strategic depth in how you want to approach different encounters. This system encourages experimentation and adapting to various enemy types and situations. The setting of Enotria is truly one of its standout features. It's heavily inspired by Italian folklore and vibrant commedia dell'arte aesthetics, making for a visually striking and unique world. This isn't your typical dark fantasy. It's a world bursting with color and theatricality, even in its despair. You'll explore regions inspired by Italian landscapes and architecture, encountering characters and stories rooted in these rich traditions. The combat is fast-paced and relies heavily on precise timing and understanding enemy patterns. There's a crucial parry mechanic, which, when executed successfully, can stagger enemies, opening them up for critical hits or allowing you to create an opening in a heated exchange. There's also a unique elemental system. Enemies and your own weapons are imbued with different elemental affinities. This creates a strategic layer where exploiting an enemy's elemental weakness with the corresponding element from your equipped weapon can significantly increase your damage output and even inflict unique status effects. Conversely, using an element that an enemy is resistant to will make your attacks far less effective. So let's talk about the things that I like about Enotria. First, the setting and visuals. Honestly, this is probably the biggest selling point for me. Enotria is beautiful. It's this incredibly welcome change of pace from most Souls-like games that tend to lean into the dark, gray, bleak, and oppressive. This game is vibrant, colorful, and feels a bit more alive, even with its underlying narrative of stagnation. It's a joy to simply just look at and explore the unique artistic direction. Next is the parry mechanic. When you nail a parry in Enotria, it feels amazing. By pressing the parry button at the precise moment an enemy attack is about to land, you can deflect their blow. This not only negates the damage, but often throws the enemy off balance, creating a crucial opening for a counterattack. It can also open up some enemies to follow-up attacks that you can perform after a successful parry. It's got that satisfying feeling and gives a real sense of mastery over your enemies when you pull it off. Which is great because parrying is practically essential in this game's combat, especially against the tougher foes and bosses. You'll be using it a lot, so it's a good thing that it feels good. I also really liked the speed and impact of the combat. When everything clicks, the combat in Enotria is fast, fluid, and impactful. Dodging feels responsive, weapon swings have a satisfying weight to them, and landing a critical hit often results in a visually impactful animation. When you get into that rhythm of parrying, dodging, and exploiting elemental weaknesses, it's genuinely a lot of fun and makes you feel like an unstoppable force. The next thing I want to touch on here is the environmental puzzles. Enotria throws in some platforming and environmental puzzles. They often require you to observe your surroundings, manipulate levers or mechanisms, or utilize your movement abilities in creative ways to progress. They provide a nice change of pace from the combat encounters and encourage exploration beyond just looking for the next enemy. It's like a little bit of adventure game sprinkled into your Souls-like. And then there's the elemental system. The idea of a rock, paper, scissors elemental system is genuinely cool in concept. You'll encounter enemies with different affinities to elements, each one being strong against another and weak against another. By equipping weapons with the corresponding element, you can deal significantly more damage. Also, some elemental attacks can afflict status ailments, adding another layer of strategy to combat. I love the strategic layer it could add, forcing you to think about your loadout and adapt to different enemy types. However, this is where we start to veer into the not so great. Let's talk about some of the things that I don't like about this game. First, it's that elemental system in practice. While the idea of that system is intriguing, it means you pretty much always have to have 4 weapons ready to go at all times to combat the elements of enemies or bosses you're facing. Ideally, you'd want a weapon of each of the core elements, and potentially a non-elemental option as well. And you would want these to be readily accessible at all times. You can equip them to your 3 masks or builds, distributing your preferred weapon for each element across your available masks. However, even then it's a lot to keep track of and constantly swap between mid-combat to ensure you're using the most effective element. I also found that certain elements felt incredibly effective, like the poison, and they were easy to understand, while others just never seemed that efficient or fun to use, leading to some of them feeling neglected. It felt a bit unbalanced and more like a chore than a strategic advantage. So next I want to talk about the masks themselves. Instead of traditional character builds where you might invest stat points into specific attributes over time, you collect and equip these masks that define your core combat abilities. Each mask comes with preset stat distributions that favor certain playstyles, like high strength for heavy weapons, high dexterity for faster ones. Also, each mask has a set number of inlays that are slots where you can equip passive buffs and abilities that further customize your build. But here's the thing, you also have the traditional stats that improve as you level up by spending this game's equivalent of souls. And your gear, weapons, and armor has stat requirements and scaling. So while you technically can have 3 different builds ready to go with your masks, allowing you to quickly adapt to different situations or enemy types, in my playthrough, I found it much more efficient and effective to just focus on one single build, one mask with a set of inlays and complementary gear, and optimize it. The mask swapping felt a bit cumbersome and less impactful when I just wanted to specialize and deepen my understanding of a particular playstyle. The next thing that didn't really do it for me was the characters and storytelling. While the world is visually stunning and draws from interesting cultural inspirations, I have to be honest, I had no idea what was going on most of the time. The narrative delivery felt disjointed, the lore was often presented in cryptic item descriptions, and the main storyline was difficult to follow. The characters I encountered felt underdeveloped, their motivations weren't that clear, and I honestly had very little desire to invest in their stories or understand the overarching conflict in this beautiful but baffling world. When this is done well in a Souls or Souls-like game, I love diving into the lore. I love going onto YouTube and hearing what other people have to say about the theories and the things that are going on in the world. In Enotria, I had no desire to go and do any of that. The next thing I want to talk about is the difficulty. Encounters with regular enemies could range from trivial to surprisingly punishing, sometimes within the same area. Bosses, in particular, varied wildly in terms of difficulty. Some felt appropriately challenging, requiring mastery of the combat mechanics, while others felt either like damage sponges with overly simplistic attack patterns, or featured instant kill mechanics that felt unfair. The game also offers a Souls-like mode and a story mode. Souls-like mode drastically increases enemy health and damage, making many encounters feel like a prolonged battle of attrition, while story mode significantly reduces the challenge, often trivializing combat. There's no real in-between, which is a shame for players looking for a more consistently balanced and finely tuned level of challenge. Talking about the bosses and enemies, they're pretty repetitive in this game. While the initial enemy designs are interesting, you'll quickly start to notice that a lot of the regular enemies are just reskins with a different elemental effect. They might look slightly different and have a different elemental aura, but their core movesets and behaviors often remain the same. The same can be said for many of the mini-bosses you encounter throughout the world. This lack of enemy variety can make exploration and combat encounters feel less engaging over time. In the positive section, I mentioned that this game provides some environmental puzzles that are fun breaks from the combat, but there is a negative side to that coin as well. The platforming in this game, while not the central focus, is extremely rough due to the character movement that can feel pretty floaty and imprecise. That makes platforming sections more frustrating than fun. There were times where I died just because of a janky jump or a platforming section that demanded precision that the game's movement system just didn't provide. This lack of tight control often leads to frustrating, unwarranted deaths that feel more like a fault of the game than the player. And then finally, on the negative side, this game is a janky, glitchy mess. My experience with Enotria was plagued by a significant number of technical problems. I encountered instances where a boss would inexplicably stop moving entirely, making the fight trivial and immersion breaking. Frequent and noticeable frame rate drops occurred, particularly in visually busy areas or during intense combat. There were also persistent hitches and stutters, interrupting the flow of gameplay. Additionally, texture and object pop-in was quite noticeable, further contributing to a feeling of visual inconsistency. These issues definitely had a significant negative impact on my overall enjoyment and made the experience feel unpolished and at times frustrating. So after all that, here's my honest take. I haven't actually finished Enotria. I made it to the third major area, and honestly, it just stopped being enjoyable. The persistent technical issues, coupled with the repetitive enemy design, the cumbersome elemental system, and the inconsistent difficulty just wore me down and made it difficult to stay invested. Enotria has so much potential with its gorgeous and unique world, the satisfying parry mechanic, and the impactful combat, when it functions smoothly. But for me, the glaring technical problems, the repetitive content, the uneven difficulty, and the underdeveloped narrative ultimately soured the experience and made it hard to recommend wholeheartedly in its current state. But what do you think? For those of you who've played Enotria The Last Song, let me know in the comments if it's worth sticking with. Did I give up too soon? Do the later parts of the game address some of these issues? What were your experience with the game's systems and mechanics? If you haven't played it, does this review make you more or less likely to jump in? If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Souls-like content and gaming reviews. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.